Well, it's all gone a little bit wrong for Prince Harry, hasn't it? Because his event in Australia, where he is a, wait for it, keynote speaker on mental health, he's got no qualifications in that, they've had to slash the prices. So we've got Meghan's event that isn't sold out with hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of tickets left. And then we've got Prince Harry's event where they're having to slash the prices.
Overall, guys, what I will say about the packaging is that it looks cheap, especially the tea. I feel like these tins are very cheap. And for somebody who is obsessed with packaging, Meghan Markle, did you know that this sticker is crooked? I believe it's also crooked on the back here. Yeah.
This is what happens when very silly people are given very big budgets and book very stupid speakers for events where they're not qualified. Some people should not be given power.
At the Ridge Summit in Melbourne, Prince Harry appeared as a keynote speaker at a psychological safety conference. The event presents itself as focused on workplace mental health, and he is positioned as a speaker on the topic despite not holding formal qualifications in the field. Reports indicate that ticket prices have been reduced by around 50%. Gold-tier tickets reportedly dropped from approximately £1,978 to £997. This suggests a pricing adjustment by organizers in response to weaker-than-expected demand, with the aim of increasing attendance and filling seats. At the same time, Meghan's wellness-focused retreat event in Sydney is also reported to have a large number of unsold tickets. Both events are taking place in Australia during the same week, and both appear to be facing similar challenges in attracting enough paying attendees at their original price points. From a financial perspective, this creates two possible outcomes. Either organizers accept reduced overall revenue due to lower ticket prices, or they rely on the lower pricing to generate additional demand that was not present at higher price levels.
Why on earth would you be paying to see Meghan and Harry? You just wouldn't. This was always going to be a disaster. Meghan Markle's launching a new jam. I mean, she's not, but this is what we'll be fed something like this from the Sussex machine, which is just Harry and Meghan at this point, really, isn't it? Harry and Meghan at this point, really, isn't it?
The second scenario would imply a significant group of potential attendees willing to pay around £997, but not the original higher price. Overall, the situation suggests that demand is highly sensitive to pricing and that initial expectations of strong premium-level interest may not fully align with actual market response. The concept behind these events was that high-profile names could sustain high ticket prices, but current adjustments indicate limitations in that approach. Some commentary has also focused on the contrast between the event's theme of workplace mental health and its pricing structure. But the main observable fact remains the ticket price reduction and the level of unsold inventory. Harry is speaking about workplace issues such as pressure, dismissals, and management under fear. Topics that some critics say overlap with accusations previously made about how his own organization has operated. The decision to book him for this event appears to have been based largely on name recognition. Critics argue that a more detailed review of publicly available claims and staff-related allegations might have led to questions about whether he was the most suitable speaker for a workplace mental health-focused conference. Commentators such as Lee Cohen, writing for outlets like The Spectator and GB News, argue that the commercial appeal of Harry and Meghan is primarily tied to Harry's royal background rather than independent business success. In this view, his public profile is connected to his position as the son of the current king and his connection to the royal institution, rather than expertise in the subjects he speaks about. This perspective also argues that over time, the commercial value of that association has declined as distance from the royal institution increases. In addition, public controversies, legal disputes, and reported internal staffing issues are said to have affected the strength of the brand in commercial markets. Examples are often used to support this argument, including comparisons to other lifestyle and product ventures. One example referenced is Jo Malone, who built a fragrance business from the ground up, developing products and expertise that supported premium pricing based on perceived quality and brand value. By contrast, critics argue that some Sussex-related commercial ventures were built primarily on the expectation that the name alone would drive demand. Various product launches have been described in commentary as underperforming, with claims of weak product execution or pricing that did not match consumer expectations. More broadly, the argument is that brand value can generate early attention but is difficult to sustain without consistent product or service quality. In this view, initial interest driven by fame may fade if it is not supported by strong commercial fundamentals. The situation around recent ticket pricing adjustments is presented as an example of this trend, suggesting that original premium pricing has had to be reduced in order to attract sufficient demand and fill available capacity. Commentary from Lee Cohen and others raises questions about King Charles's role in the ongoing situation involving Harry and Meghan. The argument presented is that the king has the authority to address what some see as a structural issue for the monarchy, but has chosen not to take stronger action.
Do you believe it? There is apparently a limit to how much money people will pay to be lectured on the ins and outs of workplace wellness by a man who hasn't held a 9-to-5 job in his entire life. Now, let's just pause a minute. Not only has he never had what we would all call a normal job, a traditional job outside of obviously the work he did within the army, which is a proper job. But when it comes to Harry, who knows what he was doing, where he was doing things. Can joke about Meghan and Harry, but actually there is a really, really concerning aspect here that Harry and Meghan evidently can just bully people. And they're bullying people that haven't got the same amount of power and influence and money as them. And then they're just, are they paid off or told to be quiet?
One of the key points discussed is the potential removal of royal titles and formal distancing from commercial use of those titles. Critics argue that clearer separation between royal titles and private commercial activity could prevent the perception that royal status is being used for branding or financial benefit. Another point raised is the continued presence of Harry and Meghan on official royal platforms, including the monarchy's website. According to this view, such inclusion may imply an ongoing institutional connection, even though their working relationship with the royal family has ended. Critics argue that this perceived connection can indirectly strengthen their commercial profile. The opposing view is that removing such references or titles would clarify their status as private individuals. In that framing, their commercial activities would stand on their own.
Her delusion has been seriously profound, thinking that As Ever could be just like Flamingo Estate. If I were them, I'd feel violated. They must feel a little bit violated. That she saw all this information and then went and just kind of made her own. Or we are not seeing people talk about Meghan's products. The buzz is dead. Nobody cares anymore. Maybe they even recognize that she would be a toxic person to be associated with.
The most basic entry-level prices from an eye-watering £1,978 to £997. That's still £997 too much.
Without any implied institutional association. Commentators like Cohen also suggest that King Charles faces a difficult balance between personal family relationships and institutional responsibilities. While maintaining a personal relationship with his son may be understandable, critics argue that it may also create ambiguity regarding the monarchy's formal boundaries. The discussion also touches on legal and administrative matters, including questions around visa applications and past admissions of drug use, which have been raised in public debate. These topics have been referenced in political and media discussions, though no public resolution has been confirmed. More broadly, critics argue that several areas involving titles, security, public funding, and institutional association remain unclear.
Never have we seen a showbiz fall from grace quite like it. Meghan Markle, desperate Duchess, has hit rock bottom, announcing her return to acting.
We've got Invictus coming up, where he'll try and exploit, in my opinion, these brave veterans, because this is the most expensive rehabilitation process for Birmingham and Prince Harry.
They claim this creates a situation where royal-linked branding and private commercial activity exist alongside unresolved questions about formal status and accountability. Supporters of stronger action argue that clearer separation would remove ambiguity and ensure consistent standards. Others view the situation as more complex, involving both personal family dynamics and institutional considerations. The overall debate centers on whether the current arrangement, where royal titles and associations remain in some form while private commercial activity continues, creates unnecessary confusion about boundaries between public institution and private enterprise. Commentary around the situation suggests that having a close connection to the monarchy can create a different level of public attention and perceived accountability compared to other public figures. In this analysis, Prince William is often described as taking a more cautious and structured approach to protecting the institution's long-term stability. Supporters of this view point to his clear boundaries with different family members and his focus on maintaining a consistent public image for the monarchy. This approach is presented as one that prioritizes institutional stability and uniform standards across all members, rather than allowing different levels of involvement or commercial activity under the same royal association. A key argument raised is that allowing some individuals to operate commercially while still benefiting from royal associations can create confusion about the institution's role. Critics of the half-in, half-out model argue that it risks weakening the perceived consistency of the monarchy's standards.
At this point, I say disregard the entire lot speaking at the event, because why would you want to attach your name to a prince that has a very bad reputation for creating a toxic work environment?
Fans are weak though, and who would want people who admire you who are that weak, who couldn't take, typically what happens is any member of a celebrity army, I can't even call her a celebrity, she's like by proxy. She's only famous because she's married to this.
Recent events in Australia are used in commentary as an example of how commercial demand can respond to pricing and perceived value. Ticket price reductions and unsold inventory are interpreted by some analysts as evidence that name recognition alone may not be sufficient to sustain premium pricing without institutional backing. From this perspective, the assumption being tested is whether royal association alone can maintain long-term commercial value once separated from formal institutional roles. The argument presented is that initial interest may be strong, but sustained demand appears more limited when compared to expectations. Examples from different commercial partnerships are often referenced in this discussion. Streaming and media deals are described as generating early attention, but facing challenges in long-term performance. Similarly, speaking engagements and live events are cited as showing strong initial visibility, but weaker than expected commercial consistency over time. Overall, the conclusion drawn by some commentators is that the value of a royal link name may decline when it is used outside its institutional structure. In this view, the difference between institutional backing and private commercial use becomes more visible over time, especially when market performance does not match premium pricing expectations.
But I have zero sympathy for him. The fact that he is putting his father through this in the final years of his life.
Now, they're literally removing journalists that have bought tickets from this event.
The broader debate centers on whether clear institutional boundaries are necessary to preserve the long-term value and credibility of the monarchy's brand identity. The main argument presented is that name recognition can help secure bookings or initial attention, but it does not guarantee that audiences will see enough value to justify premium pricing. Examples from the lifestyle and product space are often used to illustrate this point. Critics point to reports of unsold inventory and underperforming product launches, suggesting that initial curiosity driven by a well-known name does not always translate into long-term purchasing demand. From this perspective, commercial performance tends to follow a pattern of early interest followed by weaker sustained engagement when expectations are not met. Some comparisons are made to successful lifestyle brands that were built over time through product development, expertise, and consistent quality.
I have no qualms in supporting a business like that, whereby, to be honest, I wouldn't buy the candles myself because I can't relax watching them burn. I'm like £1, £2, £3. But you know what I'm saying? Someone like that is a true expert. Meghan Markle is an expert. I'll give her this. She's an expert in grifting. She is so resilient. She just bounces back and doesn't care.
She's duplicitous, self-centered, vile, disloyal, hypocrite.
In contrast, critics argue that some celebrity-led ventures attempt to enter the market at premium pricing levels before establishing a comparable foundation of product credibility or consumer trust. In this view, the market response is not necessarily about recognition of the name itself, but about whether the product or service delivers value that matches its price. When that alignment is missing, demand tends to weaken after initial exposure. This same idea is applied to recent events in Australia, where ticket pricing and attendance are used as examples of how name recognition alone may not sustain high pricing.
That's asked on the forums to get into the United States. Are you an abuser of drugs? And Harry admitted that he was. He's the one, it came from his mouth that he had abused drugs in his autobiography, Spare.
The argument suggests that while a well-known name can generate interest and media coverage, it does not always guarantee strong or consistent demand at premium price levels. The discussion also references workplace-related allegations made by former staff members in public reporting. These accounts describe challenging working conditions and management practices, although they remain allegations and part of wider public debate. Supporters of workplace psychological safety frameworks, such as those developed in academic research, define the concept as,
let's remember, King Charles, he could stop this all. He's not stopping it because, as I have told you for a long time, insiders, it is my professional belief that King Charles is working behind the scenes to bring Harry and Meghan back in some capacity. I don't believe it will look like how it did before, but all the clues are there. All the signs are there, and we are now seeing the mainstream media try and bury the Tom Bower book, aren't they?
environments where employees can raise concerns without fear of punishment or negative consequences. Critics have drawn comparisons between these principles and the types of workplace experiences described in those reports, though interpretations vary depending on perspective. Overall, the central point being made is that reputation or name recognition can create opportunity, but long-term commercial success depends on consistent value, expertise, and delivery that meets the expectations set by premium pricing. The core argument presented is that credibility becomes a major issue when a speaker's professional claims appear inconsistent with their own documented history.
So if I were advising Prince William for PR now, I would be saying you need to align yourselves or yourself and your brand with things that you believe in. And I would ask him, why have you not come out yet for the grooming gang survivors? And I would also say, anything regarding other ideologies, you need to be cooling that right down.
In this case, critics argue that speaking about workplace psychological safety while being linked to past workplace complaints creates a perceived contradiction. The concern raised is that professional audiences in fields, such as workplace safety, are likely to evaluate speakers not only on reputation, but also on consistency between message and record. From this perspective, a speaker with a widely discussed workplace history may face questions about credibility, regardless of public profile or name recognition. An example often used in this type of argument is that conferences on ethics or professional standards would not typically invite speakers whose documented actions directly contradict the subject matter, as this would undermine trust in the discussion. In this framing, some commentators suggest that any gap between advocacy and past workplace reports can create skepticism among informed audiences. As a result, pricing adjustments for events are sometimes interpreted as reflecting reduced demand based on perceived value or credibility concerns, although multiple factors may influence ticket sales. The discussion then shifts to the role of King Charles and the broader institutional position of the monarchy. Critics argue that the lack of a clear formal decision regarding titles, website listings, and institutional separation has created ongoing ambiguity about the status of Harry and Meghan's relationship to the royal institution. This ambiguity is said to allow continued public association with the monarchy, which some believe may influence commercial perception.
Big difference, Tash, between turning up in a cringeworthy cameo in a Lily Collins film than a 8-figure Netflix deal which you lost because you were so crap.
From this point of view, clearer formal separation would define whether royal titles and associations still carry institutional relevance or are purely historical. Supporters of this argument suggest that resolving this uncertainty would create a clearer distinction between private commercial activity and institutional identity. They argue that this would benefit both the monarchy and the individuals involved by removing confusion about roles and connections. The broader point being made is that unclear boundaries between institutional affiliation and private enterprise can lead to misunderstandings in public and commercial contexts. In this view, clearer definitions of status, funding responsibility, and institutional relationship would reduce ambiguity and create a more consistent framework for all parties involved. Commentary suggests that Prince William has a clearer and more structured approach to the monarchy compared to King Charles, particularly in how institutional boundaries are managed. His positions on various family and institutional matters are often described as reflecting a more consistent strategy focused on long-term stability and clarity. In this view, decisions involving certain family members and public roles are seen as part of a broader effort to maintain a streamlined and clearly defined version of the monarchy. Supporters of this perspective argue that reducing ambiguity helps preserve institutional credibility. Recent events in Australia are referenced in commentary as an example of how public perception and commercial demand respond to name recognition without institutional backing. Ticket price reductions and unsold inventory are interpreted by some analysts as evidence that market demand does not always align with expectations based on reputation alone. From this perspective, the gap between perceived value and actual demand is highlighted as a key issue.
It seemed like had they been managed properly or really been strategic, like played chess, it would have been such a different outcome. I don't know what happened to Amal and George. They're close friends. Like, I want to be best friends with George and Amal way more than I want to be at the Kardashians. Like David Beckham and Victoria, like, where's that? Like,
even with significant price reductions, commentators note that interest does not always increase to expected levels, suggesting limits to how far name recognition can drive commercial success. The broader argument presented is that clearer institutional boundaries may be necessary to avoid confusion between private commercial activity and formal royal association. Some suggest that future leadership within the monarchy may take a stricter approach to these boundaries in order to avoid ongoing ambiguity. The discussion then shifts to the broader trajectory of various commercial ventures associated with Harry and Meghan. These include streaming deals, publishing projects, speaking engagements, and lifestyle branding efforts. In this view, multiple attempts across different industries have shown similar patterns of strong initial attention, followed by weaker long-term commercial performance. Examples often cited include media coverage of contract adjustments, sales performance discussions, and event ticket pricing changes. Critics argue that these outcomes form a consistent pattern across different types of commercial activity, although interpretations of the data vary. Looking ahead, commentators outline several possible directions for future development. One scenario involves a successful shift toward a more focused lifestyle or family-oriented brand, where a smaller but stable audience supports ongoing commercial activity.
It was planned from the beginning. She denied being interested in the royal family, which she totally was. I know someone who knows the ex-husband who said she had a vision board with Prince Harry on it.
Before they met?
Yes. And she wants to
That's
pretend.
impressive. You got to admit that is impressive.
She nailed.
Other potential outcomes are also discussed in broader commentary, but the overall theme remains centered on whether long-term commercial sustainability can be achieved through name recognition alone or whether it requires more consistent product and audience alignment. One possible outcome discussed is that Harry's speaking fees may stabilize at a lower but sustainable level. In this scenario, his public speaking career would continue, but with pricing that better reflects actual demand. Supporters of this view argue that this would require stronger audience engagement and clearer alignment between subject matter and perceived expertise, rather than relying primarily on celebrity interest. A second possible outcome often mentioned in commentary is a complete separation through divorce, followed by a distinct commercial path. This would allow for individual projects such as memoirs, media deals, and documentary content to be developed independently. Some analysts suggest this could create significant one-time commercial opportunities, although it would fundamentally change the current joint branding structure. A third scenario involves some form of renewed or clearer relationship with the royal institution, not necessarily a return to official duties, but a clearer definition of roles and boundaries.
Complete and utter hypocrites in every which way a human can be. Like Harry preaching to people about where they should fly and they should only stay in sort of like eco-conscious places, and they use private jets and have motorcades of security fleets of vehicles following them everywhere.
In this view, resolving ambiguity between private commercial activity and institutional association would require decisions from all parties involved, including the monarchy and the individuals themselves. Commentators note that each of these scenarios has different levels of commercial and practical likelihood. A continued independent commercial path is often described as the most structurally straightforward, while institutional clarification is seen as more complex due to the number of decisions required. Recent events in Australia are referenced again as short-term indicators of broader trends. Ticket pricing adjustments and unsold inventory are interpreted as signals of current market demand levels. Similar observations are made regarding other lifestyle and speaking-related ventures, where pricing and attendance figures are used as measures of commercial performance. In this context, Critics argue that there is a gap between pricing expectations and actual willingness to pay, although interpretations vary depending on perspective and methodology. The broader discussion returns to the question of long-term sustainability, whether name recognition alone can support premium pricing across different industries, or whether consistent expertise and product value are required to maintain it. If you've got thoughts on this, drop them in the comments. Let's hear what you think. If this breakdown opened your eyes, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more deep dives like this. Don't forget to smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to see it.